Many of you probably have a computer that looks something like this in your house, a big old tower computer that you have hooked up to a monitor. Perhaps you're thinking about getting a new computer and you're not quite sure what to do with all this equipment. Well, I must say, I do love buying laptops instead of big tower computers. It makes it more convenient. If I go away, I can take it with me. Plus, if anything ever goes wrong with the computer, I'm not lugging something this size to the repair shop. It's only this big. But if you did that and you bought a new computer, does that mean you're throwing all of this away? Well, what I would recommend, there's not too much we could do with this except for maybe use it as bookends or a coffee table. But the way things work is that all tower computers are hooked up to the monitor with this wire. Get rid of your tower, but let's keep the monitor and keep the wire. So I'm going to unplug the wire from the monitor, and on my laptop there's a jack, a hole that will exactly fit this monitor cable. If we just plug it in right into the laptop, and now look up at our laptop and our monitor. They call this an extended desktop, which means that on my desk I can have a laptop and a big screen monitor right next to each other. Think of all the work you can get done, or watching big movies. The one thing that people think they don't want to buy a laptop is because they don't want to give up that big screen. Well, with this wire, which you already have, you won't have to give up your big screen. You can have your laptop and your big screen, and everything is all connected. And finally, the tip that I feel as if I say over and over and over to people: when in doubt, turn it off. This goes for televisions, computers, cell phones. For goodness sakes, it probably works on your dishwasher as well. If you have a problem with any piece of electronic, turn it off. But don't just turn it off. You want to unplug it, not just from the wall, but all of the plugs that are connecting them as well. The reason why this works is because plugs often start to gather up static electricity. Just unplugging something is going to release the static electricity. Plugging it back in means that the equipment, whether it's a computer or your cable box, will automatically reset itself. 90% of the time you have a problem, simply unplugging it, plugging it back in will solve the problem. In fact, if you're having a problem with your cable TV or Verizon or something, the first thing they're going to ask you when you call is, did you unplug the set-top box? Now, they don't just mean the power plug, they mean the coaxial cable, any other cables that are running from the box to the TV, from the wall to the box, all of those plugs. They would like you to unplug them, replug them, and then turn on the box again and see if it works. 90% of the time it will. Now, when you start unplugging things, the big scary moment is, how are you going to know where to plug them back in? What I would recommend is not to unplug all the plugs at the same time. If you unplugged your Verizon box, you might be left with a half a dozen plugs on the floor and have no idea where to put them back. But if you go one at a time, not so intimidating. So if I were working with this, I might just unplug this one plug. Count to 5 so that I know that everything is shut down, and then plug it back in. Well, in the course of 5 seconds, I think I can remember where this plug goes in. If you do that for every one of your plugs, one at a time, unplug, count to 5, plug it back in, you may be in business. Now, if you're working on a cell phone, your cell phone's not plugged in, so you want to turn it off. And when I say turn it off, I mean off, not just that the screen is dark. Each cell phone has a different way of turning totally off. If you're not sure, then remove the battery. That'll make sure that you're resetting your phone. But if you turn it all the way off, wait for 5 to 10 seconds, turn everything all the way back on, as I said, 90% of the time you'll be in business. This works for cable TV boxes, computers, printers. This is a very big thing with printers, is unplugging and replugging. Cell phones. As I said, it probably would work with your washing machine and dishwasher. So that brings us through our 10 tech tips. Some of them are easy to remember. Some of them you probably already knew. And some of them, like getting your computer to be on 2 different screens at once, are something I'd like you to go home and experiment with. All of them are going to make your life easier, whether you went home with a Windows 8 computer that you weren't too fond of, or you dropped your cell phone on the floor and the screen cracks into a million pieces. Remember, there's always a way. And I'll leave you with one bonus tech tip that I find, which is how I found the first 10. When in doubt, type in whatever phrase you're looking for into Google. For example, my cell phone screen is cracked. You'll get 100 answers on what to do, including videos on how you could fix the screen yourself. Or type into Google, how can I hook up a computer to 2 screens? Type it in, the directions will be right there. I also discovered while I was looking for tech tips, some tech tips that don't quite work the way they should. In fact, there are cell phone tips you might have heard of that don't really work. For example, I thought this would be fun to demonstrate on the air today, but there is a rumor going around that if you take your cell phone, and let's say you forgot your car keys, if somebody is back at your house, they can hold up the cell phone to the remote control and it would open your car, even 100 miles away. Sounds better than it is. I discovered that one really doesn't work. There are lots of tips out there that don't work, but these are tried and true. So whether you're trying to amplify your iPod for a party and you don't have speakers, or whether you're just trying to dry out your cell phone because you dropped it in the sink, try all these tech tips at home. And if you have any more that you'd like to add, please visit us on the web at technicallyspeakingtv.com and leave your tech tip. We'll feature it on a future episode. Thanks for joining us today on Technically Speaking.